story goes. Baby, now I got no more. Cause I know it from the start. Baby, when you broke my heart, that I had it down my day. I'm sure you that I will. Your love somewhere. All those times I said that I love you. Your love somewhere. Yes, I try. Yes, I love. Your love somewhere. Even though you know I cry for you. Your love somewhere. Yes, I cry.
Everyone. Can everyone hear me?
She said she'd never turn on me. Your love somewhere. What you do, your love somewhere. All this pain you said I'd never feel. Your love somewhere. But I do.
Hey, I was just playing music to get everybody in, but we could hear you.
Cool. Yeah, no, I was like fashionably late, like a very typical Somali thing. So actually, you know what? You want, if I'm honest, I was wearing a bati and like I was totally in house mode. And then I just had to like get dressed. So that's why I was a few minutes late.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, before we get started, I want to go through some housekeeping items so you know how to participate in today's event. At any time during the webinar, you have the opportunity to submit your questions to today's panelists. To do so, just type your questions into the Q&A at the bottom of the control panel. And as time allows, the panelists will address as many questions as they can during the Q&A session. I'll also be recording this and share the link after the event. It's also live streaming on YouTube. We also have a short survey at the end, so please fill this out when you can. I'm going to start off with a short presentation, and then we're going to go into our panel discussions, and then the Q&A at the end.
Hi everyone and welcome to our event. So you got the job, how to keep it. Today we're going to go over some useful tricks about keeping the job once you've been hired. Before we do though, we have a lot of newcomers and some new changes to Bridge the Gap in Tech. Let's go through them. So what is Bridge the Gap in Tech? Think of us as your supportive digital family in tech. We are here to help you achieve your tech career goals through training, programs, outreach, and access to our community. We aim to diversify tech throughout the UK and abroad. I started Bridge the Gap in Tech out of the desire for an ongoing, accessible, and inclusive tech event for people of colour living in London. I realised that a space was needed where individuals from non-Western cultures would feel welcomed, empowered, and comfortable to participate without compromising on their values. Since our first event, the group has steadily grown, providing a comfortable and empowering space to those who most. Also now have a remarkable team that shares my vision and are willing to help grow Bridge the Gap in Tech. So for those of you that are just now entering tech, how far ahead have you thought about your career? A great deal of new people in tech are so focused on getting a job that they're unable to imagine anything past getting hired. This pattern of hyper-focus towards the goalpost and ignoring the actual day-to-day requirements of keeping a job is very common. It's actually been phrased as the newbie blinders, as when you're new, you often miss such obvious insights. According to a research survey from 2016, employment has been rising faster in occupations requiring more preparation. Employment and wages have increased in most occupations that require higher social analytical skills. The majority of workers say that they will need continuous training to keep up with changes in the workplace. What all of this translates to is information overload. The requirements to get a job in tech requires months of dedicated focus and effort. And most training programs will only prepare you for getting past the initial interview, but do very little in preparing you for many of the soft skills necessary to keep the job. University and online courses do not prepare you enough for the politics of work. They fail to properly prepare you for the day-to-day, interpersonal and organizational structures of technological jobs. This is expected because while many things remain the same across all companies, each company often implements things differently. Additionally, the reality of culture varies from company to company and even team to team. Understanding this unique personality and communication style of the team you're on is super important. Being an effective communicator requires equal parts listening and understanding. If you're unable to receive or transfer information, you'll struggle to be understood. It is very important to practice active listening and confirm that you're clearly understood the things assigned to you. It's not enough to have a general idea of what the assignment is. Ask questions. There is nothing worse than mistakenly doing something in the wrong way because of an assumption you've made. Before you accept any work or commit to doing a task, ensure that you've fully understood what the work requires. You have to put a lot of effort into communicating effectively with your team. It's your duty to keep them informed. Oftentimes in tech, the measure that means the most is productivity. Or phrased differently, being competent in the communication of your work, expectations, and accurately judging your ability to get the work done under set timeline. If you're unable to deliver the work at the agreed upon deadlines, regardless of how talented and skilled you are, it will negatively hinder your career and may result in your termination. It's very important to focus on being a competent developer versus a confidence developer. Actually, developers who lack confidence but are highly competent are highly valued. For example, a developer with low confidence but high competence, when given an assignment, will ask many questions because they know how well their abilities are and what information they need to finish the task. Additionally, said developer will accurately judge the timelines and communicate early on when they think they've been given too much work, or if they've identified a blocker, even if that blocker is their own lack of knowledge or ability, they've effectively communicated their expectations and they identified delays earlier rather than later. The most important thing here is ensuring that you've communicated effectively to make sure that you don't hinder the growth of your team. It's important to keep a detailed log of events that happen at work. Imagine needing to recall when a particular decision was made by management months later, when that very same management asks who approved the change of a feature, or trying to recall why a particular feature was sidelined during a sprint. There are many easy ways to keep a work diary. A simple directory on your work computer with text files named with the current date, containing details of events that happened at work would suffice. Remember, this diary should not contain phrases such as I feel, or I felt, and instead should just be a high-level summary of the major events that happened during that day. Do not let others know that you keep a diary. You will quickly become an individual trusted by management and your team for simply being able to recall detailed bits of information about many events in the past. Secondly, when you have performance reviews with your manager, you will have entire years worth of successes that you can cite for promotions, and no one else will have the depth of intel relating to past discussions, logic, and events like you. Eventually, you will make friends at work. Always be willing to lend them an ear to listen to their woes, but be very careful, especially in a professional setting, contributing to gossip. In any group, you always have cliques formed, and in these cliques, there'll be allegiances based on shared grievances. You will want to be on the side that isn't throwing mud. Never risk being associated with the term gossiper. It will prevent you from getting promoted and create unnecessary negative impressions of you professionally. Recall, someone who gossips cannot be trusted with sensitive information. If you can't be trusted, you can't be promoted. Have an exit strategy. Always know what the conditions for you to exit a particular position are. Set requirements for yourself to reach a certain level of competency for applying for the next position, or set a timeline on when you feel you should leave a position if you are not promoted. This way, you aren't scrambling when you feel stagnant in your career and you're always working towards something. Just because you've got the job doesn't mean you should stop learning new things. Always invest in a small portion of your work week towards learning new things. Notice I said work week. Yes, it's completely fine to do some learning on the job. Over time, those skills you've learned will add up into major advantages. Also, plan on learning skills that build on top of each other. This way you ensure you don't forget what you've previously learned when you're learning the newest skill. Many new tech employees make the mistake of trying to hit 100% of their potential the majority of the time, and instead burn out and can typically only maintain that level of productivity for less than 40% of the time. This means if you try to work your hardest every day, you'll only be successful 20 to 40% of the time. Instead, you should focus on being consistent. If you were asked to come in and always perform at 40% of your ability versus being asked to perform at 100% of your ability, which one is more possible? If you performed at 40% of your ability every day at work, you would have accomplished more work in a year than trying to perform at 100% of your ability every single day. If that math didn't make sense, let's think of a scenario. Think about driving a car and fuel efficiency. Can a car go really fast? Yes. Do you want the car to always go at top speed? Probably not. Is it safe to try and run a car that fast all the time? Not without some risk of damaging it. Your brain is the same. If you attempt to overwork it, it will shut down to recover. Burnout is then very easy to understand. It comes from overworking your brain until it's damaged, at which point you need time to recover and heal. You'll quickly realize that engineers who work the hardest burn out the quickest. You want to be like a Toyota or a Honda Civic of your team and not the Lambo. Without further ado, introducing our panelists from top right to left. Our first panelist is Amal Hussain, who is currently a principal software engineer at Indigo, where she's focused on building global agricultural transportation software to annually save the planet millions of gallons of fuel. She lives in Boston with her fiance, and when she isn't working on saving the universe from itself, you can find her podcasting on JS Party and the web platform Podcast. Next is Yasin, who's the founder of TechHub, a web development company based in Hargeisa. Yasin is community-focused and champions change in Hargeisa. He also enjoys photography in his spare time. Next is Rahmat, who's a junior developer living in London with nearly 2 years of experience. Before transitioning to tech, she completed a neuroscience degree. Outside of work, she enjoys reading and learning Spanish. Up next is Abdi, who's also based in London. He's an app developer and the founder of Canes. Next is Hussein, who works on the Chrome team at Google. He's passionate about web performance and the open web. He's also a worldwide speaker, author, and contributor to multiple open source projects. Hussein is based in New York. And last but not least is Herlain. Herlain Mohammed is a US Army veteran with over 10 years of experience in the tech industry. The former software engineer turned cybersecurity professional now works as a government contractor, one of the top defense contracting agencies in the US. She also works part-time as a coding instructor, teaching web development fundamentals to students at her coding bootcamp. Herlain's passions include social entrepreneurship and edtech. She's a pioneer in educating marginalized communities in tech and a leader in proactively working towards diversity and inclusion in the tech industry. Up next is our panel discussion. Our panel discussion will be on the job market, interviews, how to keep a role, switching careers, leaving an unhealthy environment, and navigating through these times.
Okay, thank you all for listening to that. If you all want to start off with introducing yourselves, start off with Amal, and then everyone can like see your faces because I know that I introduced you already, and just give like a sentence about yourself. Maybe how long you've been in the tech industry. That's a good question to answer, and then we can go ahead and do the panel discussion.
All right. Hi everyone. My name is Amal Hussein. I'm a principal software engineer. For you wondering about like what is a principal software engineer? So I'm like an engineering technical leader. So I'm like responsible for a group of engineering teams. So in addition to being a technical lead, you're like a technical lead for a wider array of groups. And so it's really great. It's a wonderful like honor to have reached this level in my career, and I'm based in the Boston area. I also do a lot of community stuff, so you'll see me speaking at conferences or podcasting or doing events like this for the community. So I really enjoy giving back because I've gotten a lot back myself. And yeah, that's about it. You'll learn more about me, I'm sure.
Who's next? You guys can go in any order, it's fine.
I can go next. My name is Hussein. As you saw in introductions, I'm an advocate and engineer on the Chrome team at Google, and I've been in the tech industry for about 4 years or so. So relatively new, but it's been an interesting run.
Awesome.
Oh, I forgot to say, I'm sorry. I guess I've been in the tech industry about, almost a decade.
Wow.
And I transitioned from biomedical engineering before that. So I was always in some kind of an engineering role.
Amazing.
I'll go next. My name's Abdi. Abdi Ibrahim. I'm a mobile app developer, also the founder of Canes, which is an idea that I had, which I recently started working on, and due to launch in a couple months. Yeah, that's it.
I go next, you guys. My name is Herlain Mohammed, and I have been in the tech industry for 10 years now. And I was previously a software developer. I just transitioned into cybersecurity. So I work for a government contracting company. And I also work part-time. I teach coding at a boot camp.
I guess I'll go next. Hi, my name is Rahma Junaid. I have been working as a DevOps engineer. A junior DevOps engineer. I've been working as a DevOps engineer for 2 years. This is my first job out of university. Um, Before that, I studied neuroscience, and yeah, it's been all good, I guess.
Hi guys, my name is Yassine Yusuf. I'm a software developer based in Hargeisa, and I've been in the tech industry for about 6 years now. Relatively new, but yeah, I've been there. So that's it.
Awesome. So the whole reason for this event was to try and give people an insight of how to actually keep a job in tech. And I just wanted to discuss a couple of things. So once you first started your role, what do you think was the most difficult thing that you found? And what's the most difficult thing that you actually learned while you were at the job, whichever job?
I guess I'll go first. I think the hardest part was, so literally, I finished uni like July 2018. I started working in October 2018. And when I was applying for jobs, like I was just applying for anything that said tech, engineering. And at a point, I just applied for anything that would just accept me because I was like, look, I just need a job. And so literally, I didn't know what DevOps was like when I was working. So I think the hardest part was literally learning what I have to do for my job. And I think there was, especially because like when you're learning tech, like it's such a broad field and there's so many options, it can be very like overwhelming, like feeling like you have to know everything. And when you're getting started, so I think that was probably the hardest part, like getting over that like learning curve and learning how to learn like all the new technical stuff.
So you and Amal transitioned from like sciencey things into techie roles. What made you want to transition? Either or of you can answer.
Yeah, I can answer that. So I'll start with the first question, which is, I think for me, it's fair to assume everyone here is maybe trying to transition into tech. So I'll keep my answers tech focused. I think for me, like when I got my first job as a junior software engineer, even though my title didn't say junior, my title was like software engineer 1, which basically is like your bottom of the totem pole. And so I think the biggest realization for me was like, just how much you have to learn on the job, in the sense that there's very little you can do to prepare for a new job. And that goes to it's the same thing for me even now that I'm experienced, right? Like every company has its own unique domain knowledge. They have their own like things that are very specific to them. They're all using different versions of tools and they're using it in their own way. It's, and so you really are like learning the company's stack. And you kind of come armed with like, okay, I've done something similar before, and so there's a lot of like mental mapping that you have to do. But really, I think for me, like that was just how it was a really big realization of like, wow, there's really no prepping for this. And it's really like, 0 to 3 months, 0 to 6 months until you're actually really productive on an engineering team. And so engineers are like really expensive in that sense, like they're very expensive to hire because, it takes them a while to become productive. And so, you don't want them leaving in a year, right? So that's like another interesting angle for companies. But I said the other thing that was really maybe a shock was like, just how like it's very different, like when you're like working on an app on your own, right? Like you have your own project. It's very, very different from going like, like whether it's a Rails app or a Node app or whatever, like, you working with your own little thing is extremely different than like you now working on this shared monolithic thing with like hundreds of other engineers, and so like the tools and the like just the vastness of the software itself is also something that was, I think, really shocking for me. Like, so yeah, like there's just so much. I mean, especially like, if you're really new to this industry, I really would recommend like that you make sure that you're going to a medium to large size company. And if you do choose to go to a small company, not preferably one that has like, more than just one other engineer working there, right? Like you want to have a few engineers, like you want to make sure that you have people who are there to support you, because junior, like your first job is really going to set the tone for like the rest of your career. So it is actually a lot more important than most people think. So it sets the tone on so many different things. Like I won't get into it now because I should answer. So, just for the sake of time, we can come back to that later. But what was your second question, Hannah? I totally forgot it now.
I was asking how you made the switch.
Oh, how I made the switch. Oh yeah, for me
Yeah.
it was very easy. The switch for me was super easy, like because I went to a tech school, I went to an engineering school. I knew how to program before I became a software engineer. I was very lucky in that way. And yeah, I just really got involved with some of the hackathons that were happening on campus, and then off campus. I got involved with the startup scene in the Boston area, and yeah, just from there, it just was never looking back really. Once I realized making change, using technology was the fastest way to make change. It was very clear for me that I was making a leap. So yeah.
Okay. How do you feel the job market is? Because I know in the UK, the job market's a bit not that great for techies at the moment, especially with the whole COVID situation. I just want to know how it is everywhere else, because I know everyone's in different places, especially being Black in the tech industry. Do you feel like that's hindered you in any way? Anyone can answer this. And do you feel like the job market is better where you are?
I'll touch base on that. I feel like I can't really say for the UK, but what I've seen in the US job market, the tech has been one of the most recession-proof industries. People are getting hired that I see every day. I myself just transitioned into cybersecurity, and I'm starting a new role in cyber at my job. So it's the possibilities are honestly endless in the US. I think with tech leading the new, I guess, industrial revolution, as you can say, we've already seen it in the past 20 years, and it's only going to continue to grow. I know that in the UK, they don't get paid as much as in the US. I'm not really sure why that is. But I've talked to some friends that are software developers out there, and it's difficult for them to even start touching six figures. But in the US, you can get six figures in a coding career just right out of college. So I guess that would be, I would say it's a great field to get into in the US. I don't really know in regards to the UK, but as a Black woman in tech, what I noticed is they are more so, it's not really about education. Once you reach a certain point or level, it's more so about networking. Because in certain industries that I've seen, this really is for all industries. We just saw the CEO of Wells Fargo say that there wasn't enough Black candidates that are qualified to be hired, but that's just not true. It's the universities of some of the top Ivy League universities, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, they're pushing out more Black and Hispanic engineering and STEM people that are not getting hired at these companies. I think it's a double turnover rate at the amount that is actually getting hired from what the universities are producing. So it's not that there's a lack of candidates. It's a lack of networking, and also just building on experience. Sometimes you can have all of the certs, you can have a degree and still have trouble getting a job because they want you to have experience. So what projects are you doing in the meantime on your own? What are you doing on your own to try to build that experience up? Having a portfolio, if you want to be a developer, is very important to do also. So I would say take side jobs, always work on what you want to do outside of your job, and treat it like, I don't want to say treat it like your 9 to 5, but have your 9 to 5 and then still treat it as if you're an entrepreneur. And that's how you can really grow yourself in technology. It's not really a space that's created for Black people. It's really not. So we have to find our own avenues and create those for ourselves and for our community.
Hannah, I wanted to add to, I guess, give a different perspective to what these guys said. I think the job market in the UK is really, really difficult when you're just starting out. And I think the UK has a lot of, they like to just say things and pat ourselves on the back and then do nothing. And I find that especially with tech, because literally, when I graduated in 2018, as I said, and before graduation, I started applying for jobs in 2017. So this is September, August 2017, and I was sending out applications. And also, I think because as somebody who's coming straight out of university without any experience on your CV, I think that also makes it really, really difficult. Getting your first junior role, I found, was really, really hard. But I think once you're in and once you have that experience, then it's much more easy to navigate and get your second and your third or your fourth role. But it's the initial first one, like you always need that person to take a chance and to say yes. And that is just something I just literally have to keep like knocking and knocking and knocking and not get discouraged when people say no, because you get that. It's very difficult, yeah, in the UK here. Yeah.
I think I can add to this, which is like, I'm based in the United States as well. But I do know, like I've worked at companies where we, you know, obviously we have global presence, including my present company, like the engineering market, like software engineering market in Europe is very different in the sense that on average, things are actually 5 to 10 years, I think, behind, like in general, if you like aggregate Europe, like they're not even on the like latest version of kind of like standards for modern web development or whatever, except for mobile. Mobile is very different. But like just what their web companies, I mean, Booking.com is like a really good example. I think they're based somewhere in the Netherlands, but like their technology is extremely old school and antiquated and outdated, you know? So there's just a lot more aging software, and like, I don't know, like I'm hoping there's going to be a little bit of a revolution. In terms of numbers, there are more software engineers per capita like in Europe than there are in the US actually, which is interesting. But the pay is like half on average, like in Europe, in some parts of Europe, especially like Germany. I know the UK is even better than Germany. So there are jobs. They're not as quote unquote glamorous as they are in the US on average, but there are lots of jobs. I just think it's just very similar to other cultural things in Europe where like people of color have a much harder time with upward mobility in Europe. Like that's just like a sad reality, you know? So you just have to like hustle twice as hard, 3 times as hard actually, because it's twice as hard for us in the US. It's 3 times as hard for you guys. But I would say similar to what Caroline said, like you got to hustle, but also I really would advise you to like, you don't need to wait for people to give you a job, right? So kind of piggybacking off of, I think some of the like spirit behind Caroline's like response, like you should feel comfortable like being empowered to just do stuff. Like you want to make something, go build it. Like you want like, and work for free until you're good enough to not work for free. You know what I'm saying? I worked for free. Initially, I did a lot of pro bono work for startups. Actually, some startups that are really successful now. I like helped design the first iteration of their website, you know, in the Boston area. Like, and so really, you know, work for free until you're good enough to not work for free. That's really, and it's for if you're good, it's going to be less than a month. Like try that, at least for me, it was less than a month. I was working for free for 3 weeks until I started getting like paid for my time, right? So just you need the experience, you need to get your feet wet. And so like doing free work is like it'll stop the chicken and egg problem, right? Which is the chicken and egg being like, do you have experience? No. Okay, I can't give you this job until you have experience, right? So get experience, and then it won't be there'll be less excuses about giving you a job, you know?
I feel like in the UK, they kind of encourage us not to work for free. I don't know if that's just me. Like all the tech events and stuff that I go to, they kind of tell us, don't work for free. Kind of build your portfolio on your own and see where that takes you. But I feel like to kind of leave a lasting impression, you do have to kind of give stuff for free, especially with clients, so they can see your worth and your value, which is what I've noticed working for myself.
Yeah, I mean, for people who don't want you to work for free, you should say, great, then hire me, you know? Until then, like, I need to get myself out there and I need to experience, you know? Like, it's just very easy for people to like give you ivory tower, like advice because they're just not in the situation that you're in, you know? So just take advice with a grain of salt, especially from white people. I'm not gonna lie, like, you know, so.
Just to add to that too, I think there's also many different ways you can work for free, right? Like there's the pro bono work that can help in so many ways, but I also think there's other things. You can build your own portfolio, like you mentioned, Hannah. Also open source. Like for those that don't know about the open source world, it's just, if you're doing mobile development, if you're doing web development, if you're doing so many types of tech, there's a whole community building things and people work together to build it. Then I wouldn't be where I am now if I just didn't do some open source work. I think a lot of people don't realize how important, how useful that can be. And time again, I've switched about 3 times. I've switched 3 times throughout my career. And every single time it was because of the work that I did in open source. And I think a lot of people don't realize just doing that work on the side, even for a little bit, can make you stand out quite a bit.
I wanted to make a point, sorry. And I think we're sort of making an assumption that this person knows about tech, as this hypothetical person trying to get into the industry. Because I can literally just visualize myself like this time 2 years ago, I was just about to start my job. Like my anniversary for my job is like October the 8th. Like literally, I knew HTML, CSS, but beyond that, like, and I knew like basic stuff like what front end, what's back end, but in terms of like to build something that's more than a website, I really couldn't do that. And I think it's also sometimes about having opportunities too. I feel like if you don't know, then you don't know. If you don't know what's out there, then you can't say, I'm going to apply for a DevOps job if you don't know what DevOps is. And I think like that lack of information is really, I think, such a big barrier to people getting their foot in the door. I feel like if you know, then you can go find out and you can build the confidence to apply, you can learn the skills, but not knowing, I think, which is something that is really common, I feel, within our community. Because whenever I tell people what I do, I just have to say I'm an engineer, because like getting into it, it's just really long. Like, and I think that is really sad. And I think that is something that I hope changes within the next generations, that these fields that, you know, like sometimes when I hear startup stories and this person's like, oh, my dad worked here and so I built this, and it's like, how did you even know that was a thing at like 13 or 15? And I feel like, I hope this is something that like going forward, that our community knows what's out there, so we can also have a seat at the table, a fairer seat at the table, basically. Yeah.
Okay, so talking about seat at the table, like how do you get that seat at the table, and how do you think you can become more friends with like senior engineers at your new job to try and get more experience and like insights? To anyone?
I'll touch bases on that. And also I wanted to say that there's more than just technical roles. There's non-technical roles also in the technology industry. So a lot of the stuff we're talking about in relation to like coding and web development or software engineering, there's other things that you can do. You can do QA, you can do testing, you can do project management. You can get even on the management side of tech. So definitely look up all the different avenues so you don't limit yourself. Know what you want to do and then have a set plan of how you're going to attain that. See what certifications you need to get. Talk to people who have already got those certifications and build like a rapport with them. And also like network on LinkedIn, also on Twitter. I know a lot of people know about Black Tech Twitter, and it's one of the, I want to say, best networking aspects that I've seen for Black people in technology in comparison to LinkedIn, which I like the approach overall better with the Black Tech Pipeline. So use resources to your advantage and definitely just network. Tell everybody that you know, hey, I want to be in tech. I want to do this. This is what I want to do. And there's somebody out there that'll be like, this is what you need to do to get there. And find a mentor if you can. Having some sort of like job coach is always very essential. So I would say that helps a lot. I've had a lot of different people that mentored me in life. So especially in my career. And that's the easiest way that I would say is being open to learning and wanting to learn will be the easiest way to get people to gravitate towards you. Because I've sat in on job interviews where we've had different people, like someone might come that's more qualified, but we've hired the person that was less qualified just because they had an eagerness and willingness to learn the job and they're more teachable versus bringing someone that will kind of bring down the company culture or be bring the team down in morale, so to say.
Yeah, I definitely want to add on the fact that there's a lot more in tech than just coding. Every single one of my friends, anybody I know who like wants to get into the world of tech, the first thing they ask me is, what language should I start learning? And I'm always like, first of all, do you know what you want to do? Do you want to just do web development? Do you want to do front end? Do you want to do back end? Do you want to do mobile development? Do you want to stick to, I don't know, project management and so forth? So I think that's super important to mention. I think that's key. On the note of getting a seat on the table, just reaching out has helped me so much. Like building a Twitter brand and so forth. Even for myself, my past experience, I would reach out to people, just build a brand online and someone would just reach out to me, ask about the work that I'm doing. And somebody who did that a year later became my manager at Google. So I think just making those connections early on can just change your future before you even know it. So I think people should just not be afraid to talk about their work. I think naturally and organically, you'll build a brand, whether it's on Twitter, LinkedIn, people will just gravitate towards what you're doing.
Yeah, just to touch bases on that one more time. I think that a lot of it has to do with imposter syndrome, or people feeling like they're not good enough, or they're not technical enough to be able to talk about what they're doing, but talk about what you're learning too. I know somebody who was just creating YouTube videos, and as he learned something, he would kind of create a video to reinforce what he learned and teach it to other people. And he got his first job teaching coding off of just the strength of his YouTube videos and following his year progression in that. So utilize anything that you can when it comes to social media, and just as you're learning, tell people what you're learning.
Yeah. In regards to working for yourself and like building your personal brand, Abdi, do you think that social media has like helped you connect with more people? And like, could you talk about what you're kind of building and working with at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. Social media is absolutely crazy. I think especially Twitter, like Lion said, Twitter for Black people, as compared to LinkedIn, I feel like Twitter is way more accessible. Like the number of people that I've connected, especially within the tech community, I think 90% has come from Twitter. Literally, like all the people within tech that I know now, even some that I've connected properly with, whereas we help each other with projects and ask them questions. It's really been helpful, especially when you get access to people where you can't normally get. Like I've connected with people that have taught me things that I didn't even know existed, things that could make my life way easier, instead of using old ways, which wasn't really helpful. So yeah, I think especially Twitter, Instagram, if you know your ways about it. But yeah, Twitter is the most easy way for people like us to connect.
Yeah, I think one thing I just generally want to add to this is, sorry to kind of go back to an earlier point. I'm reminded sometimes getting to a software job can be the goal, but you can do that through like maybe first starting as a support tech, or first starting in QA, or first starting in, you know, a peripheral role, right? And like just to like what Hurlain and Hussein said about like different jobs, like for every software engineer, like you need things to be done before they get to the software engineer, and you need things to be done after the software engineer is done with their work, right? So like the way I like to think about it is like there's this upstream, all these upstream jobs like product design, user research, right? And then there's downstream jobs like support, customer service, or release engineering and DevOps, right? So DevOps kind of takes, you know, they kind of help take care of the servers and all of the other automation processes around software development. So, so there's a ton of jobs. And I think it's like, as you progress through your career, that's when you find out like what you're most excited about, right? Like what kind of like makes your brain go like have fun, right? Like, and sometimes people pivot like all the time, you know, you start out writing JavaScript and you're like, and then you write your first line of Python or first line of like, Go, and like, you know, you're converted all of a sudden. You realize like, oh, the backend is more for you. Or, you know, maybe you'll write your first line of SQL code and you'll realize you're obsessed about data, right? Like there's so many different things. And as you progress, you'll find what your passions are. So, you know, just keep an open mind, and just don't let people push you into one thing or another because of your gender or your color of skin or whatever, right? Like that happens. The closer you get to the metal, the less people there's barely any people who look like me in this industry, period. But then like the closer you get to the metal, like the less women, the less people of color, right? It just becomes like a lot of old white dudes. And so, you know, don't be like if you're a woman and you want to be DevOps, like Rahmat, like you should feel empowered to be so. Don't be intimidated by the fact that you don't see people who look like you in that industry at all, you know? And she can probably talk to you more about that. But yeah.
Yes, and you're getting a few. Sorry.
Sorry,
Go on.
I
Would
fast
like
more. I was just going to say also, I think it's important to reverse engineer your goals so that you don't waste time. I think that a lot of people, there's so many different fields in tech, so you don't always know what you want to get into. So say you want to get into like cybersecurity or cloud security, look at the different aspects of it. In cybersecurity, you can be on offensive or defensive, where there's red team, blue team, depending on what type of job you want to do. Reverse engineer, see which certifications it'll take to get there, what degree would be best suited for you in order to get that, because it might not always be computer science, even though that's like the holy grail. There are other ways that you can get there quicker. So there's not a set defined path for every technical role. There just isn't. So find your own path and create that.
Yes, and you're getting a few questions about the like tech scene in Hargeisa and how it is freelancing and working for yourself.
So I started my career back in when I was in Asia. So that was completely different, experience from when I came back to Hargeisa. And when I came here, the market was really close to non-existent. Like there are big companies, there are tech companies in here, but they don't actually like value technology as it should, as they should be. So the biggest problem is that the younger generation who are coming into technology doesn't have the capacity to actually stay in there. So most of the time they go for outsourcing, they go for Kenya, Uganda to get developers from there. So it's really, really difficult to get your seat in the table in here unless you start your own thing. So that's what I did, and most of my clients came from my Asian network. So most of the time I work with those people. It's really close to impossible to find a local business that's willing to hire you as a tech individual. So that's why I started a couple of communities to actually get the awareness and the skills up from the ground. Basically, we haven't been doing so much this lately, but we're trying to do more. We're trying to do more. It's just we gotta live with it.
That's great. Could we answer?
Sorry, Yasin. I have a question about the tech community in Somalia. I have a lot of followers that are based in Hargeisa and Somalia. I never really knew there was such a huge tech community in Somalia. Can you talk about that?
Basically, there's Telesom. They have their own, developer team, but they don't do anything basically. But all of the the SAT system, all of the newest Wi-Fi app, they all outsource it to Kenyans. And there's a company called Safari Phones that's really, really eating up all the all the tech jobs and contractors in Somalia. So basically, they don't respect you as someone who can do the stuff that they need. They are more trusted on the outside people. So basically, there's the way a company, the company who built the way it's Tabarik. There's Almi Academy. There's technology companies there, but it's not like the market is still growing. It's not like it's already there. So it's
So your
still
chances of getting a
growing.
job in a tech field is not big.
You can get jobs like system administrations and all that stuff, but you like the chance of getting coding or like web development, mobile development, networking, security is really slim, because all these big companies, like there's only two companies in Hargeisa, like the Somtel and Telesom. So they all outsource all their security stuff to IBM, I guess. So they're from like outsourced to US. So it's really difficult to get to that
Yeah.
area.
So the talent is there, but you're not getting the jobs, basically. That's really sad to hear. Okay.
Oh, I just wanted to also touch base. There's this guy, I don't know if you guys have heard of him. It's pronounced Duran Ali. He's on YouTube, and he's like the coolest thing I've ever seen. He does technical videos, but he doesn't know Somali. So
Yeah, he
like, he'll say
comes to our
all the
coffee
coding.
meetings on Thursdays. He's
He does come
awesome.
where? Oh, really? Is he in the UK? He based out of the
No,
UK?
he's in Canada.
Oh, he's in Canada. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really neat. Yeah. So I thought that was one of the neatest things that I've ever seen. And he created a Discord group for Somali programmers. If anybody's interested in joining that, I'll drop the link for it.
Yeah. This is kind of like the stuff where I get very jealous, because I feel like when I was coming up, I did not have any of this stuff. I wish I had an Amal that like I could talk to. That'd be amazing.
Honestly, that's the whole reason why I started this, because I felt like when I started 8 years ago, I didn't have anyone to talk to, and it was just old white men, and nobody kind of understood my dilemma, and everything was confusing, and I didn't want to feel silly, because there's all these questions that you need to ask, and there's people that you need to relate to, and sometimes there's all these microaggressions in the office, which is one of the questions that was asked, and it's just, how do you navigate through that when you're the only Black person and you're the only Muslim person? You need to go and pray, you need to do all this stuff, and everyone thinks you're insane, and everyone's going out drinking, and you have no one to, they make all these racist jokes. So that's one of the questions that someone asked. They said, could you talk about navigating microaggressions in the workplace? Because I've had it with all these suntan jokes. Yeah. So how do you go about navigating microaggressions in the workplace?
I can tell you what I do. So I had a very interesting life, because I grew up, I was born in New York City. And when I was a baby, I moved away to Dubai. So I grew up in Dubai and came back to the US when I was like, I don't know, 17 and a half or something. But I mean, I used to come back to the US in the summers, but I mean, I came back to live permanently and went at that age. And I grew up somewhere where, like, I don't know, Dubai is very multicultural. So people in my classroom were all colors. So I didn't really grow up with so much of the Black versus white thing, you know? And so I was just this, you know, Black girl who was really good at math and science. And I went to a tech school that was primarily all male. It was about 75% male at the time that I went. And 75% male. And some majors were more male than others, right? Like, obviously. But they were like, I was just this like brown girl that was really like a lot better than most people in my class, actually. And that led to a lot of, I would say, comments. You know, I got a lot of like, oh, wow, like that's really good. People were like really surprised like that I would do better than them with like less effort. And, you know, there was just a lot of microaggressions around like my success and my academic success in particular. You know, because I'm not allowed to be like smart and funny and Black, you know, like you can pick two. Smart and Black usually aren't supposed to be in the same box either, you know? So, you know, but all of these things were so over my head, you know? So that's like, I was so oblivious to it. It took me years after the fact to start processing and digesting and like understanding what was happening to me, because I was so oblivious about like microaggressions, because I didn't grow up in a place where I had microaggressions about me, you know, in that way. And so I've kind of stuck with that same attitude, which means like, I know what my goals are in life, and I'm not here to like make you a better person, you know? And so quite frankly, like, I just don't care, you know? Like, I don't even know how to say it other than that. Like, I literally like, it's about your goals. And if someone is getting in the way of your goals, then you escalate and you address it. And then you go to your manager and you say like, this person is doing X, which is bothering me, Y, because, you know, you should escalate. But in the event that like, you know, people are making comments that are super under the radar and not really like, I would say escalatable offenses, like you surely should just like, you need to not be emotional about your relationships with these people at work. Like, you're there for a paycheck. It's very transactional. You have career goals, and like, you're there to like, like achieve those goals. Like anything else is a distraction. And like honestly, you just like you're not like the world isn't going to be changing anytime soon, right? And so like learning how to deal with this is going to be important for your mental health, like, you know. And for me, for my mental health, I decide to just ignore, and I pick my battles very, very wisely. So,
Yeah, I
and quite
agree.
frankly, like I'm now senior enough, I don't have to put up with any of that, right? Like it's more when you're junior that it's really hard, you know. But in an ideal world, you work somewhere where you're valued, respected, right? And when you're not, you should leave, right? And I understand if it's your first job, you're not in the position to do that, but get good enough to leave. You know, you don't need to like put up with abusive situations either. So
Yeah, I agree 100% with what Amel said. Don't take things personal, because you don't have to see these people outside of work. You really don't have to deal with them outside of work. So definitely don't take things personal. But I will say there's a difference between microaggressions and disrespect. So if you're dealing in a situation where it's just flat out disrespect, handle that accordingly. Do what you need to do. I will always say document everything. Make sure that you keep emails, messages, always keep everything documented so that you can have that to fall back on, so that it's not just a he say, she say type situation. You want to deal with things with the process. So you want to make sure that you have everything in order that you need to deal with it. But when it comes to microaggressions, you're going to have that, whether you're Black or whether you're a woman. It doesn't matter what it is. I've been the only Black person on a majority of my teams. I've been the only woman on the majority of my teams. So you will feel microaggressions from your management. You will feel it from higher ups. You'll feel it from your own team coworkers. You'll feel it from the clients that you deal with or the end users that you support. And it's just a matter of not really taking things personal. There was this one time that I was working a desktop support position, and it was on an open trade floor. There was like 500 people that were on the trade floor that we supported. And so they just kind of come up to you whenever they want, and they'll ask you like, hey, something's wrong with my computer. Something's wrong with my application. Can you fix it? And so they would come up to certain individuals on the team because they just naturally felt more comfortable, like, oh, this is a white man. He knows what he's doing. And she might not know what she's doing, even though I'm the one that trained them. So it's a matter of learning how to deal with that. Also getting people to open up to you. I want to say just being very personable, because the more I was on that team, they stopped going to certain individuals because they're like, oh, she knows what she's talking about. And then they'll start coming to me to help them with whatever issue it was that they needed help with. So just definitely stay on top of your game, know your job well. And if you get disrespected, handle that accordingly, in the right way of escalating it to your manager, to HR, whatever you need to do. And always keep a paper trail of everything.
yeah, I also just want to say that like, honestly, just like Herlane said about like escalation, right? You should know that like you have an opportunity to like talk to your company about like unconscious bias training or other like diversity trainings. Like if you really feel like you're somewhere and you know it's not a safe place, like you should let you know, and you're stuck there for some weird reason, you can't leave, right? You should really talk to your manager about that stuff, because it does make a difference. As corny as it sounds, like diversity training really does help, because it's just the sad reality of like people don't even know that they're being prejudiced because it's so ingrained, you know? So like people even like they sometimes just don't realize what they're doing. So if you are in a position to give feedback, also I would do that. But you know, there has to be a level of safety and trust in order for you to give feedback as well, right? But if you are going to give feedback, I would advise you to follow a formula, which is situation, observation, impact. You know, so what was the situation? What was the impact that it had on you? And you know, like, or no, situation, observation, yeah, and then situation, like when it happened, observation, what happened, like, and then impact, like how it made you feel, right? So that way, you know, you're gonna give constructive feedback. And I've been a manager, and trust me, like I have a mentor manager, like a friend mentor of mine who's an older woman, a white woman. She works at Microsoft. She's like an SVP at Microsoft, which is like a very big deal. And like when she goes to business meetings, like she'll be there with her team, and then like the partners that are meeting them for the first time will say hi and shake hands to the people who she is their like manager's manager, you know what I mean? And they always have to say, no, she's the boss, you know? It's so trust me, like that, like even at the SVP level at Microsoft, like, you know, like being a woman that's reached that level, you're not immune from like internal like prejudice, right? So and unconscious bias. So just like you're not alone. It's a problem that we all have. But really, also in the event that you are really like mentally like bogged down by this, I really would highly encourage you to like see a therapist. Like this is a very stressful industry. I don't know many people who are in tech that don't have therapists, you know, myself included, by the way, you know, so like it's good to have a therapist. It's good to like talk it out. This is really hard stuff. Like being an engineer is hard, and then being a professional engineer is even harder. And like, you know, it's hard. Like our families are not always like, they don't have the language to like support our needs, you know, mentally and emotionally. So, you know, like find help. Like that's why, you know, that's why it's there. Nothing wrong with getting like mental health counseling. It's very important. No stigma.
Another thing I want to say with that is also, if you're ever in a job that's affecting your mental health that much, never be afraid to walk away. Never devalue yourself for a position. I know a lot of times they make it seem like there's not enough positions out there. There's an abundance of positions, and you will find somewhere that you are valued, that has a culture that you fit into. So don't feel like you're stuck in a role with a company or a team that's not valuing you. Always be ready to go on to the next role. So don't ever feel stuck, and don't ever feel devalued in that position. There was a time when I had accepted an offer for a new position, and then I accepted the offer. There were some like regulations, certain things, because with the government side, you need to have a security clearance in order to get the offer. So it was contingent upon getting the security clearance, and then also about getting certain certifications for the position. And they gave me 3 months time frame to do so, which in that time frame, I completed everything that I needed to do. And then at the time when I was supposed to start the position, they were like, oh, well, unfortunately, we gave it to another candidate. And I was like, how do you guys give me a contract? We signed, like I already signed the offer letter, signed everything, gave me my start date. I was getting ready to relocate for this job. So I was like, how do you guys just give this to another person without notifying me, without telling me anything? And I've been given, and I passed up other offers for you for this position in general. So they offered me another role after that was below what I was what I initially accepted, and I turned it down. I was like, no, I'm not accepting that. It's almost like $30,000 pay difference. I was like, why would I do that to myself for something that you guys messed up? I'm not going to accept that. And so because I stood my ground, and I even emailed some of the other higher up people that were in the tech management for the regional, and they were like, you know, we're going to make you your own position. And they opened a role with HR for me. Had I sat there and accepted that role, I would have took a $30,000 pay cut for whatever reason. And it's just sometimes I want to say stand your ground and know your worth, and people will meet you there.
Love that. That's amazing. Hussein, could you talk a bit about your experience at Google and how you actually got the role? People asked.
For sure, yeah. So a bit of some background on myself. I lived in Toronto before I moved to the States. I studied at University of Toronto. I did mechanical engineering at school. I don't know why I picked mechanical engineering. I had no idea what I was doing. Two of my older brothers were engineers. I was like, I think I like cars. So that was a big mistake looking back. But in my first year, I did a intro to C programming course. And that was the very first time I ever saw code. I was about 17 years old, and I hated it, couldn't stand it. I almost failed the course. And I remember telling my friends around there, I was like, I'll never do coding ever again. And then fast forward, I did an internship after a few years. That was in a manufacturing company. It had a small programming team that I kind of helped out with. And then after I graduated, I actually tried to build a website for some reason at home. And I was like, this is actually not as bad as it looks. So I was super fortunate because the very first job I got was at a big consultancy. I was really lucky to have navigated into like a small programming team. I had no idea about web development, but I just asked and I was like, it looks cool what you guys are doing. Can I join? And they let me join. So I worked there for a year, and that's when I really just tried to learn about front-end development and pick up there. And then I joined a small dev agency in Toronto right after, which was focused in JavaScript and web development. And that's when I started getting my gear up, and I spent a bit of time doing open source on the side. I did some talks and meetups. Still had no idea what I was doing, but I kind of enjoyed it. And then one of my sort of idols that I looked out to for so long, I kind of created my Twitter account to follow this one person. He reached out to me one time. He was like, hey, this project you built looks super cool. Could you talk more about it? Could you tell me about it? Could we work on it together? And I was like, for sure, yeah. And at that point, I had no idea about how open source worked. I was just excited to have worked with someone I looked up to. And we did that for a bit. And then he just told me, hey, if you're interested, I wouldn't mind referring you for a role in Google, because this is the type of work we do quite often. I said, yeah, for sure. I had no intention to move to the States. So I did the interview. And for anybody who doesn't know how the interview process works at a company like Google, it's an ordeal. It takes time. I took like a good few months just studying on the side, did the interviews, still didn't think I got the job. I was like, there's no way they're gonna take me in. And about a month later, I got a phone call saying, hey, if you wanna fly to California, we have a position available for you. And I moved, packed up, worked out of Silicon Valley for a year. And then I moved to the New York office about a year after. So I've been super fortunate, I've been super lucky. And the type of work that I do now is, my role is engineering, but it's a developer advocate role. So it's not your typical software engineering role. Half the work that I do is very community facing. So I work on the web and Chrome team. And a lot of the work that I do is I tell web developers how to build fast websites, what they should be doing on their websites. And then I also talk to the engineers who work on Chrome, the browser, and tell them what they can be doing better, what APIs they can change, how to make things better for developers. So it's something that I enjoy doing because it's a bit of both. And I think a lot of people aren't very familiar with developer advocacy. I'm out here, has been doing a lot of advocacy type work for the web platform. She's huge. She's a driving force. And it's always good to see a fellow Somali. Fun story, we both lived in Dubai before moving out to the States. So it's just interesting, and how we're both in the web world. But yeah, and I think the things that I've learned along the way is, like, I'm very lucky to where I am now. I don't know where I'm gonna be a year or 2 years from now. But one of my dreams, ever since I started development, was I really wanted to work in Silicon Valley, and I was like, I have to just be in that world for a bit. And I think you stand out in general in tech when you're a Black Muslim, but when you're also in a place like Silicon Valley, it's just that times 100. And very soon after, I realized I don't think this is for me. I was like, let me move back to the East Coast, and I was super lucky that I had the chance to. And I think it's generally hard in tech in general. And I think also in big companies like Google, we have a significant problem getting people who are Black or minorities, and it's a disaster, to be frank. And they're doing a lot of diversity work. They want to improve, but it's going to take years. I think it's just an issue when you know that there's so much good candidates who are Black and underrepresented who could be amazing at what they do, but they just don't get that role. And I think they just don't realize how unfortunate it is. So hopefully that can change in the future. It's going to take time, but stuff like this definitely helps.
That's amazing. Could I ask like an open question to everyone? One of the events I did, I think 2 weeks ago now, was on imposter syndrome and navigating during this time and lockdown and everything. Do you guys face imposter syndrome when you first started, or even now? And how do you think you should overcome it and deal with it?
Yeah, I guess I'll answer first. Yeah, definitely. I think especially as like a junior DevOps engineer, and especially as somebody who comes from, you know, a non-tech background, somebody who is literally like the first 3 months of like my grad scheme, they were just teaching us DevOps. Like none of us knew what it was, and we were all just learning on the job. So a lot of the time we do get thrown into like the deep end, but I think it's having to get comfortable with not knowing. I think for me that has helped, because I have to acknowledge the fact that I'm not going to know everything, and I'm not going to be able to figure this out, but being confident enough to be able to find the answer to whatever it is I'm struggling with, and having, I think, good senior engineers that I can talk to, I think makes a world of difference. And somebody that I can say, okay, can you explain this to me again? Because I kind of forgot, you know, like I think just being confident in not knowing that you won't know everything, but you're at this job because you deserve it, and because you have worked as hard as everyone else, that you are an engineer, even if you just don't know this one topic. Yeah, it doesn't take away from your hard work. Yeah.
I think another thing to add to that for when it comes to imposter syndrome, knowing your worth and knowing that you're in a space that you deserve to take up. You deserve to be there. Like you work just as hard, if not harder, than some of the other people. There are people that are less qualified than you in the same exact role as you. So I think that we might not always know our worth and our value that we bring to a company. So knowing that and standing on that and being confident, you won't feel imposter syndrome. And then also knowing your job, knowing the technical expertise that it takes. If you know something, no one can take that away from you. And so I feel comfortable explaining certain things. Like in the beginning of when I started teaching coding, I had a lot of imposter syndrome because I was like, I've only been a software developer for like a year or 2 years now. So I didn't really feel like I knew enough to be able to teach it to somebody else. But I'm teaching this to somebody who knows absolutely nothing. I know more than them. So I shouldn't feel like I don't know enough to be able to teach them something. And I know a lot more through teaching them that I didn't really realize that I knew, just being able to explain certain concepts. And that kind of helped affirm for me and kind of get me out of that imposter syndrome mindset. Being in spaces where you're vulnerable and being able to teach others, that helps a lot as well.
Yeah, I have to second like 100% what she said. I also do want to say though, like, I think Caroline is talking to kind of maybe her journey of getting over imposter syndrome. But I want to say, like, for those of you who are not there, imposter syndrome is very real. Okay. A lot of people have it, and doesn't matter if they're new in tech or old in tech. Like, quite frankly, like some of the smartest people I know have imposter syndrome. And I'm like telling them all the time, like, what the hell, what, you're amazing. And they're like, no. And you know, one of the things I think that makes imposter syndrome so prevalent in tech, especially, is the fact that like, there's no way any one person is going to know everything, right? Like that's impossible. Like there's no such thing as like knowing everything in tech. There's no board certification that you're going to pass, like similar to a doctor, right? Where, you know, you get certified as like a proper software engineer. No one really knows, right? Like, I mean, if you like look at the cumulative things that I've done and the cumulative things that Hussein has done, we're both software engineers. We've done completely different things. Neither of us has experiences that invalidate one another, right? And so ultimately, I think, you know, it's just such a vast industry. And there's always someone who knows something different than you. And there isn't like a way to really compare your knowledge base with someone else's 100%, you know? And so there's all of those things that produce a lot of anxiety for people who need their boxes checked, you know, or their T's crossed and their I's dotted, right? And so really, like, you are always going to be learning. And as long as you know that, like, if you have, as long as you have made a choice to enter this industry, like as a software engineer, you're also committing, whether you realize it or not, to lifelong learning, right? And so as long as you're taking the time to continually grow and improve your skills, and you know, you're not afraid to ask questions, and that you and don't be afraid to be vulnerable, right? Similar to what Caroline was saying, like, don't be afraid to like I can tell you now, I'm a freaking principal engineer, and I now say I don't know way more than I ever did in my whole career. You know what I mean? I'll say, oh, I don't know. Could you explain that to me? Right? Doesn't matter. My boss isn't going to think I'm stupid if I say I don't know. My boss is going to say like, good, you're like not pretending like you know, and like you're really taking the time to understand something. So I know when you're talking about something, you know what you're talking about. You know what I mean? So like, it's all good. It's all right to say I don't know. It's okay to say I don't understand. Everyone who's teaching you is in a position where they also were like once didn't know this thing, right? So we're all learning together, and just don't be like, anyone who tells you that they know it all, like just run away like fast, because there's just no such thing, you know? Oh, and by the way, every software engineer I know also has the Google open on one page when they're coding. People like Google for basic syntax all the time, myself included, you know? So some things I just like, I feel like if I Google this thing one more time, Google's gonna get angry at me, you know? So, you know, I'm instead of getting search results, I'll get back a page that says like, just bookmark this already. You know what I mean? So anyways, that's just me, right? So it's all good. Like your job is not to memorize, your job is to learn, and learning how to learn, right? And the more experience you have, the faster you'll learn, and you'll have more data points to kind of build and collect your like little knowledge map.
So as a self-taught, this has been my problem for a long time. And yeah, like what helps me get through this and take my time to actually understand what if I'm doing that time, or don't let it consume all my mental, ability to focus on my task, is that there's a lot of things that I don't know about that I need to learn, and nobody knows everything, as Amal mentioned. And there's also Google. So that's what actually motivates me to focus more on the task in hand in Basha syndrome. So yeah.
I would say to one last thing. So yes, nobody knows everything, but you should have a learning path, right? So you stop being an imposter about this one thing. Learn one thing well, and then learn another thing well, and then learn another thing well, right? So you should have a path for yourself, and you should be trying to grow and learn in areas, but don't overinvest, right? Learn what you need to learn bit by bit. Like, don't overwhelm yourself, and try to keep your learning very close to your doing, right? So like, you want to try to learn more about the tools that you're working with today, that way you can at least have a way to apply your knowledge, right? As you're a new person, like, coming up.
Yeah, touching on what Amal said about having a path. Someone asked, what languages or certifications do you feel are in highest demand or have the highest return on investment? And that's something that you can't really just give one clear answer to. I would say look at the tech sectors that have the highest paying jobs or like the highest return. Look at like data science, Internet of Things, machine learning, cloud security, autonomous vehicles, big data, and look at where tech as a whole, look at the technology industry trends, where it's going to be in the next 10, 20 years, and shift into trying to work into those fields. And then kind of just reverse engineer and create a path for yourself of what certs do you need to excel in those careers. Also, what technologies are going to be prevalent in the next 10 years that I can start catching up and learning now, so that in 10 years from now, when people are just getting up on it, I have the upper hand because I'm already an expert, quote unquote, in that field. So I would definitely say have a learning path and create that and have a guideline and stick to it.
What 3 habits do you think has helped you in your industry and what you're kind of doing?
I can say one habit, but I can think of 2 more after. But I think for me, being patient was something that I had to realize early on. Some of the projects that I've built that, got me recognized to a certain degree, or even like got me job referrals, have taken me 10 months, even 12 months to finish. And when I started, I was like, I had this idea. It's an open source thing. I don't know where it's going to go. It's kind of scary when you try to build something from scratch, even if you don't really know the tools you're using. But I think a lot of people tend to just generally, and this is not tech specific, this is, I think, just human instinct, to start something and then quickly just stop because they realize, the end goal might not be as easy as they thought. But I think just being patient. So even if you have a 2-year plan to switch into tech, even if you have a 10-year plan, even if you can do it in 6 days, I think just enjoying the process is something that I tell myself to keep doing.
I think one habit that's really important to have is to always be asking questions, or to be comfortable constantly asking. I think for me, like whenever we're working on something, like we do a lot of like pair programming with like the senior engineers, and they'll be like working on like an infrastructure code thing that I've never seen before, and I'm like, okay, so what does this mean, and why does this do this? Literally, like, to not be afraid of being annoying. I think especially as a junior, because you have so much you need to learn, you're gonna have to almost sort of like start to bug them almost, like, because there's literally so much to learn that you're gonna have to keep asking questions. So I think that's one habit that's important to have, asking questions.
I would say being honest with myself, because I really see the road that's ahead of me. So I was a bit different. I didn't graduate from anywhere, so that was like real like hardship to me. And I would say patience, as Hussein did too, because it takes really a long time to just finish one thing and have all the motivation that you're gonna need to see at the end. So that I think that's the two most important habits that I needed to do to get to where I am.
Those are
I'd
all
say, oh,
great
go on.
answers.
Go on.
Oh no, please, Abdi, go ahead.
I'd say consistency. Like you've gotta be consistent with what you do. Like you can't expect quick results. People that start tech, they start expecting to learn how to create a website within like 2-3 weeks. But it's a step-by-step thing. You have to be consistent with everything you do, and you've got to take your time with it. There's no rushing. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, that was great. Oh man, consistency is a good one. That's like a really powerful one. And I'm like somebody who hates routine. I have to like fight myself against it, but it's like super healthy for me. Like I need routine in my life. Actually, like I need daily routines, weekly routines, you know, hourly routines, like getting up, for example, drinking water. I have a tendency to hyper focus on something, and I get like, I'm just a creative type, you know? So it's like a curse and a blessing at the same time. I would say, for me, really, I think hustling really like has really helped me. Like I'm hungry, I'm super hungry. I'm like usually 3 to 4 times hungrier than like everyone in my peer group, you know? And that's how I've been able to kind of like, I think like aggressively punch my way up in my career, right? Like I was like a really young engineering manager. I was a really young tech lead. I was a really young principal engineer, right? Like all of those things have like helped, like compared to my peers anyway. And so like they've like my hunger has kind of gotten me to the table early, right? But like that comes at a cost, right? So coming early also means like, you know, there's certain things you haven't had to learn the hard way, right? Like your peers. So you have to listen. So that's the other thing. So I, as much as I am like successful in my own right, I have lots and lots of mentors. I listen to like lots and lots of people. Lots of people advise me on the same thing, even like just to get different perspectives. Like I'm constantly seeking feedback. And feedback for me is like a mechanism for my self-improvement, you know? So you have to be listening. You have to be willing to listen to criticism. You have to be willing to grow in the areas that you're not doing well in. You have to be willing to change, you know? It's just kind of like, you don't really get to past certain levels without growth and change, right? So you become a senior engineer and all of a sudden there's all these new things you have to learn and be good at. And there's things that you have to improve about yourself in order to be able to make room for these new skills, right? And if you're not willing to like make those changes about yourself, then you're not going to really grow, right? And so really growth comes with change, and like the faster you accept it and the more you're willing to be humble about yourself, like the faster you'll grow. Really, it's counterintuitive, but like it is real. And yeah, I think hustling, being hungry, you know, having lots of mentors, being open to feedback, and just remembering that no one is going to give you anything for free. Like no one is going to hand you success on a plate, right? You're a person of color, and I'm also a woman, right? And I'm Muslim, right? Like triple whammy. No one is going to give me anything for free. So we don't have the luxury of like coasting, right? Like I can never coast at a job. Like that's just like not a reality that is afforded to me, right? So just being real, like, you know, it's a sad reality, but you know, hopefully my kids won't have to work so hard, right? And hopefully their kids won't have to work so hard, but like we're not there yet. So
that's great. Everything that she touched on. Hustling is definitely one of the main ones. And I think one aspect of hustling would be networking. That's one of, I guess, want to say the main habits that I feel like has helped me a lot in my career. I still keep in contact with people that I met when I was 17. That's when I joined the Army when I was 17, and they were all IT specialists. So now they're doing government contracting. Anytime that they come across a contracting role or a gig, they'll shoot it to me like, hey, we have this role open. Do you know anyone that's qualified for it? And that's just off the strengths of me keeping in contact with them for like the past 10 years. Also just recruiters. I keep in contact with every recruiter that I've ever interviewed with or that had put me on for a position. Some of them, I met them at the beginning of their careers when they were just starting out in recruiting. And now they're senior recruiters at some of like the top companies. And I know that anytime, if I lose my job tomorrow, I can reach out to them. They'll say, hey, yeah, look at these are the positions we have available. And I already know you, I know your work ethic, and I know who you are. So it's easier for them to bring me on and recommend me for a position just off the strength of already knowing me previously or having worked together. I always keep in contact with different people that I work with throughout every single job that I've had. I'll always keep people for references, and I'll be a reference to them, because you have to have like, you know, mutual beneficial like relationship with these people that you're working with. So network, and always recommend people for positions, try to get other people into roles. And if you have something that you know somebody else will be more qualified for, shoot them that email, let them know, hey, this position is open. I'm not going to take it. I think you'd be a great fit for it. That's another great way to network. So I think that's one of the great habits that has helped me. Along with, I want to say sometimes we don't really recognize certain things as just pure luck. Just being in the right position at the right time, that helps a lot of people more than they know. A lot of things in tech are just off of luck of who you know that will recommend you for certain things. So that luck and networking, I would say, are two great habits. I don't know if luck would be considered a habit, but that's something that we don't always recognize as something that helps us out.
Luck is opportunity meets preparation, though, let's be honest.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I feel like that would be like a good place to like end on a good note, that quote. Thank you all so much for coming and joining and sharing your experiences. And thank you so much to the team as well that've been working really hard in the background with all their tweets and all the little things they've been doing in the back. Could the panelists stay behind, because I'd really want your feedback as well on the actual event and how it went for you. To all the attendees, thank you so much for all your questions and always like engaging with us and making sure that this is kind of like a safe space for everyone. And I haven't had any issues in any events that I've done so far. I've done about 15 now and you've all been amazing. Please fill out the feedback form as well, because we're trying to see what more events we can do for you guys and who you guys want on the panels. Thank you. Bye guys.